a powerful CEO, a younger man's daring pursuit. As sparks fly in the boardroom, four lifelong friends embark on a global quest to reignite their deepest bonds. Will love and loyalty survive the test of time? Hit like and subscribe to join their unforgettable journey. Eleanor Carter had crafted her success with care and commitment. At 63, she was a dominant figure in the marketing industry, a woman whose presence alone earned respect. Every action she took, from adjusting the sleeve of her fitted jacket to the steady sound of her heels on the floor, reflected her mastery. But this evening felt unusual. The company's yearly gala was in full swing, drawing executives, investors, and upcoming professionals. Eleanor spoke with polished ease, her message stirring the ambitious crowd. As she stepped down from the stage, greeted by applause, her sharp gaze swept over the room. That's when she saw him, Ryan Parker, one of the firm's youngest rising leaders, standing near the drinks table. He was hard to overlook, with his confident posture and striking looks. Yet tonight, there was something in his look that unsettled her. It wasn't mere appreciation. It hinted at something more. He raised his glass in a silent toast, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Eleanor dismissed the brief warmth that stirred in her. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, chatting and networking, her attention firmly on business. Still, Ryan made his way to her. "Your speech was excellent," he said, his tone calm and smooth. She turned to him with a slight lift of her eyebrow. "I'd hope so. I've had enough chances to get it right." He laughed softly, a natural sound. "You don't just practice, you command every sentence." Eleanor valued intelligence but could always spot charm. "Compliments don't sway me, Ryan." "Wasn't meant as flattery," he replied, eyes locked on hers. "Just stating the truth." His openness threw her. Few approached her so directly, especially not someone much younger. Yet there was no ego in his tone, just calm assurance. She told herself it meant nothing, just another ambitious employee trying to stand out. Then the music changed. A slow, soft melody filled the room as couples made their way to the floor. Ryan held out his hand, face unreadable. "One dance?" Eleanor paused. The offer was simple, but it felt like a test. She looked around. No one would question her if she declined. But something stirred within her, prompting her to accept. His grip was steady yet gentle, his hand resting lightly at her waist as they moved in sync. He led confidently, matching her steps with surprising familiarity. They talked about work, plans, strategies, goals, but it was the pauses that said more. A touch that lingered a moment too long. Eyes that didn't look away when hers did. "You're not like the rest," Ryan said quietly. Eleanor gave a small laugh. "Because I'm older. Because you don't need to prove yourself. You already know who you are." She hesitated, just slightly. He noticed. His words, though spoken lightly, cut deeper than she expected. He wasn't looking at her as a boss or a leader. He saw her as a woman. The song ended and Eleanor stepped back, steadying herself. "Enjoy the rest of your evening, Ryan." Before he could answer, she vanished into the gathering, ignoring the unfamiliar tension building in her chest. She buried herself in work, determined to forget the moment. Just a dance. Nothing more. Yet she remained distracted. Ryan's calm tone, his direct gaze echoed in her thoughts longer than it should have. Ryan, meanwhile, seemed unfazed. He continued his tasks with his usual precision, offering polite greetings in meetings, never once mentioning that night. Maybe she'd imagined the spark. Maybe his admiration had meant nothing. That thought should have reassured her, but instead, it left her uneasy. One night, hours after most staff had left, Eleanor stayed behind reviewing a proposal. A quiet knock broke her focus. Ryan stepped inside, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. "Didn't expect you to still be here," he said. "Could say the same to you," she replied, setting her pen down. He held out a folder. Final tweaks on the client file. Wanted to drop it off. She flipped through the pages, nodding. "Looks good." "High praise coming from you," he said, his voice light but layered. He didn't leave. Instead, he leaned slightly on the desk, watching her. "Is something bothering you?" she asked. He paused. "I think you're avoiding something." She sighed, shaking her head. That's nonsense. His voice remained firm. At the gala, that wasn't just a dance, and you know it. The silence grew heavy. Eleanor set the folder aside, choosing her reply carefully. I've kept my work and private life separate for a reason, Ryan. Whatever you believe happened, I know what happened, he said, cutting her off. And so do you. A silent clash simmered between them, neither stepping back. It would be simple to dismiss him, to shut the door on this, but she couldn't. You're treading risky ground, she murmured. He gave a slow smile. I think you like a little risk. The air grew thick with tension. Eleanor stood, placing distance between them. You should go, Ryan. He looked like he might resist, but then nodded. Okay. At the door, he turned. You can try to ignore this, Eleanor, but it won't change what's already real. She didn't move long after he left. His words hung in the air, undeniable. For all her control, she felt it slipping. The days after that conversation left her restless. She told herself it was just a passing interest, but deep down, she knew better. He had seen past her defences. Worse, she had let him. She avoided him, burying herself further in her job. Meetings became quicker, discussions kept formal. Every exchange stayed professional. Yet, even in crowded rooms, she felt his presence. He watched her not with boldness, but with quiet understanding. It unsettled her. Then the news arrived. A security breach. Sensitive documents leaked to a rival. The betrayal hit hard. Not just because it risked her life's work, but because it came from someone she trusted. Greg, her longtime partner. The revelation sent shockwaves throughout the organization. Meetings dragged on into the early hours. Strategies for containing the fallout were quickly put into action, and Eleanor felt a kind of exhaustion she hadn't known in years. Though she had grown used to handling disasters on her own, this time the burden seemed heavier. She remained in the office well after midnight, combing through documents and trying to piece together a plan. The knock at the door didn't catch her off guard. She expected it to be another update from legal. But when she looked up, Ryan was standing there. You need to go home, he said as he walked in. She sighed and massaged her temples. That's not an option. You're barely holding it together. Leaning back, she replied, I appreciate the concern, but I'll be fine. He studied her in silence for a beat before speaking again. You don't have to do it all by yourself. Her breath caught and she shook her head. Ryan? No, he interrupted, stepping in closer. Just hear me out. This time she didn't cut him off. He rested his palms on the desk, leaning forward just enough for her to see the earnestness in his expression. You've spent so long being the one in control, you've forgotten how to let someone stand beside you. She looked away. That's how I've managed to survive. But is that the life you want? It was a question far more dangerous than anything else he'd said, because she had no answer. His voice was gentler now. You don't have to carry it alone. A heavy silence settled between them. She could reject him again, push him out, pretend none of this was real. Or she could acknowledge what she already knew deep down, that despite every reason not to, she wanted to let him in. I'm not sure I know how, she whispered. His expression remained steady. Then let me help you. For the first time in years, Eleanor had no words. She sat alone in her office, eyes fixed on the glowing city skyline. Her thoughts were a chaotic mess. Control had always been her strength, her defense. Now it felt like a burden dragging her under. Ryan hadn't broken her with intensity, but with calm resolve, with the quiet belief that she didn't have to bear it all on her own. She kept telling herself it was foolish. She should know better. But the truth was staring her in the face. She wanted this. She wanted him. Not the desire. That had never been the issue. It was what followed that terrified her. A gentle knock pulled her from her spiraling thoughts. She didn't have to look to know who it was. Ryan walked in, his gaze unwavering, like he already knew she'd be there waiting. He stayed silent at first, letting the moment settle. Then he stepped forward, stopping just short of her desk. I meant every word, he said quietly. She gave a slight nod, releasing a shaky breath. I know. He didn't flinch. Then what's holding you back? She turned her eyes away. This wasn't supposed to be my life. Ryan let out a soft laugh and shook his head. Whose life ever turns out the way they imagined? She met his eyes, searching for hesitation. There was none. You think this is easy? She asked. No, he answered honestly, but that doesn't make it any less real. Her pulse raced. The weight of it all pressed on her like never before. She'd spent a lifetime fortifying herself, convinced it made her stronger. But standing in front of him now, she saw how those barriers had also left her alone. She took a step forward. No grand speeches, no promises of forever, just a quiet choice to stop resisting what had already begun. Ryan didn't move, giving her the space to decide. And when she did, when she stepped beyond the limits she'd clung to for so long, she felt something she hadn't known in years. Liberation. Laughter spilled from Ava as Daniel wrapped his arms around her, spinning her lightly before placing a soft kiss on her forehead. You're incorrigible, she said, her cheeks flushed. He smirked. And you adore it. Across the room, Emily was curled up beside James on the couch, his arm loosely around her shoulders, their hands gently linked, a quiet symbol of the time they'd spent growing together. James murmured something to her, making her eyes crinkle with a grin. Ava caught the moment and called out, "What's he whispering now?" Emily smiled and rolled her eyes fondly. Reminding me I owe him a rematch in chess from 5 years ago. Daniel laughed, shaking his head. Some things never change. The four had been inseparable since their college days. Midnight cram sessions, spontaneous weekend drives, constant debates about which cafe made the best coffee. Those years had been golden, bursting with wild laughter and a friendship that had felt unshakable. Love had found them naturally, like it was always meant to happen. Daniel and Ava had been the first, drawn together by humour and a mutual love of adventure. He had chased her with charming persistence, slipping notes into her textbooks and ordering her favourite coffee before she could. By the time he confessed his feelings under a sky full of stars, she'd already decided what her answer would be. James and Emily's connection had grown more quietly, rooted in soft-spoken loyalty and unwavering presence. He was her support through exams, the one who always waited to walk her home safely. When he finally said he loved her, it was with the confidence of someone who had always known where his heart belonged. Marriage hadn't changed their love. It had only made it stronger. Daniel still scribbled goofy messages for Ava, sometimes on napkins, sometimes fogged onto the bathroom mirror. James, ever the romantic, brought fresh flowers to Emily each Sunday morning. But it wasn't only the romantic gestures, it was about trust. It was Daniel knowing when Ava needed a little distance and Ava recognizing when he needed encouragement. It was James listening with intention when Emily spoke, and Emily holding his hand quietly when there was nothing left to say. That evening, as laughter filled the room, Ava leaned into Daniel with a content sigh. We're lucky, aren't we? He kissed the top of her head. Luck's got nothing to do with it. We chose this. Every day we keep choosing. Emily exhaled, smiling as she leaned against James. And we always will. They didn't require grand gestures or dramatic moments. Their love was woven into the little things, the way Daniel poured Ava's coffee just the way she liked it, the way James instinctively reached for Emily's hand in a crowd. It was ordinary, it was true, and it was everything. Later, Ava adjusted the lights on the patio while a cool breeze carried the scent of grilled food. There wasn't any special occasion, just the joy of being together. James poured wine into glasses. Daniel flipped the final piece of steak. Emily moved gracefully between them, setting the table with practiced ease. As they all sat down, the conversation flowed effortlessly, jumping from shared memories to light-hearted teasing. Then Daniel leaned forward, his expression turning more serious. There's something we've always talked about doing. He glanced at James, who gave a nod. We've been talking about this for ages. Emily lifted an eyebrow. Should we be worried? Daniel laughed. Not at all, but just hear us out. He placed his glass down, his voice carrying a hint of wistfulness. Remember back in college how we used to imagine travelling the globe? Living life off the grid, free from schedules, just experiencing the world with no rules? Ava smiled at the thought. Those late-night chats about backpacking across Europe, wandering through old towns, and watching sunrises in places they'd never seen. But life had moved them along different tracks. Jobs, obligations, routines. James leaned forward. We still want that, and we want to share it with you, just us four, like the old days. No rush, no deadlines, just being in the moment. A quiet pause settled over them. Ava and Emily exchanged looks, hesitation in their eyes. It wasn't that the idea wasn't appealing, it was just life. The comfort they'd created, the steady rhythm of their days, the safety that came with the known. Ava hesitated. Leaving everything behind, it's not a small thing. Daniel took her hand. I get that. And we'd never ask you to do anything you're not sure about. But think, when's the last time we did something completely spontaneous? Something that reminded us of who we were? Emily ran a finger around the edge of her glass, thoughtful. What if we end up regretting it? James gave her a soft, understanding smile. What if the real regret is not going? His words sank in. They weren't 20 anymore, but that didn't mean adventure had to be behind them. The night wore on, filled with nervous what-ifs and bold why-nots. They weren't impulsive kids now, but maybe, just maybe, this leap was exactly what they needed. By the time the last candle flickered out, Ava met Daniel's eyes and slowly smiled. All right, she said with a breath. Let's do it. Emily let out a disbelieving laugh, shaking her head. I can't believe we're actually saying yes. James grinned. Then let's make it unforgettable. And just like that, their lives turned a corner. The choice was made. There was no going back. The airport buzzed with movement as they stood together, passports ready, bags slung over their shoulders. Excitement mixed with nerves filled the air. The truth of it all was settling in. This was real. Their first destination was Paris. As they stepped onto the cobbled streets, everything felt dreamlike. Ava and Daniel walked hand in hand along the Seine, city lights shimmering on the river's surface. Emily and James tucked into a quiet cafe, their hands joined over steaming mugs, taking in the peace of the moment. It wasn't just about seeing the famous places, it was about being present, rediscovering small joys they'd forgotten in the race of daily life. In Santorini, the sun slipped below the sea, lighting the sky with golds and purples. They sat on a terrace with a view of the water, laughter bubbling as James dared Daniel to find the best, hidden beach. The next day they searched and found a secret cove, the water crystal clear. They swam until they ached, salt clinging to their skin, laughter bouncing off the rocks. Not every part was smooth. In Rome, their bags went missing. Emily, usually calm, was flustered. Ava, ever the cheerful one, tried to spin it into fun. Just means we get to buy new outfits, she said, looping her arm through Emily's. Daniel and James talked their way into a tiny shop, winning over an old shopkeeper who helped them pick out new clothes. By the time they hit the streets again, the tension was gone, replaced by laughter at the absurdity of it all. Marrakesh brought a different energy. The market stalls burst with colour, the air heavy with spices, the chatter of bargaining in a tongue they didn't speak. They wandered the maze-like streets, soaking it all in. James bought Emily a silver bracelet, sliding it onto her wrist with a silent look that said everything. Daniel, always the risk-taker, convinced Ava to try local street food she'd never consider at home. They embraced the unknown, letting themselves be swept up in a world so unlike their own. One quiet evening in a snowy village in Switzerland, flakes drifted past their cabin windows. They sat wrapped in blankets by the fire, warm light flickering across their faces. Emily rested her head against James's shoulder, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize how badly I needed this. Ava looked at Daniel, her hand brushing his. Same. It wasn't only about travel, it was about peeling back layers, getting to the core of their relationships. In the hustle of life, they had stopped really seeing one another. Now, in this stillness, there was no yesterday or tomorrow. Only the now. Only them. And that was more than enough. Months went by, but the journey still felt surreal. They had wandered ancient paths, chased dawn from mountaintops, and lost themselves in unfamiliar cities. Now, standing at the edge of their final stop, reality crept back in. Their last destination was a peaceful seaside town, far removed from the busy places they'd explored. The ocean stretched wide, waves rolling in with a calming rhythm. It was there that Daniel and James had one last surprise. Ava and Emily looked at them in puzzlement as they were guided down a lantern-lit path. At the end, a small setup waited, flowers, candles, and the setting sun casting a golden glow over it all. Daniel held Ava's hands, his voice calm. This trip wasn't just about seeing new places. It was about us, about remembering why we chose each other. James turned to Emily, brushing a loose strand from her face. We wanted to finish this journey the way we began it, together. So we thought, why not renew our vows? Tears gathered in Ava's eyes. She glanced at Emily, who already had her hand over her mouth in awe. There was no need for long speeches. This wasn't about new promises, it was about honouring the love they lived every day. The ceremony was simple, just the four of them, the waves nearby a silent witness. Daniel spoke first, his tone filled with calm certainty. I don't need a new vow. The one I gave you still holds. I'll love you, respect you, and choose you, every single day. Ava let out a soft laugh, her grip tightening on his hands. Then I promise the same again and again. James faced Emily, his eyes deep with meaning. You once asked, what if we regret this? But now I know this is the best choice we've ever made. Emily blinked through tears. No regrets, she whispered. Not then, not now, not ever. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, they stood embraced, not just by the warmth of the fading light, but by the love they had nurtured through every struggle, every joy, and every quiet second in between. Their journey was ending, but deep down they knew it was just the start.